Okay. Hey, hope everybody's having a great night tonight. I am. If you haven't seen, like, this is like the most I've ever posted in one day, but I've been having fun and la 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 la. But if you don't know with me, one thing always leads to another. So if you don't know, I've been like teaching myself guitar. So I just like started writing down the basics, right? So then when I get down here to like the music notes, um, what was the Eddie ate dynamite, goodbye Eddie. So I'm just looking at just this part right here, and then of course just reading it backwards, I see DAE. And then this doesn't jump out to nothing besides like Gabe if you put an A right there. But like this just jumped out to me with the DAE. And then like, obviously like 7 notes to a song. I mean to this song. Then the same thing with do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And then even when she says, when you know the notes to sing, you can sing most anything. Still under that count, right, with the 7 notes. But then I come over here, right? So this is where it's gonna start taking a sudden turn, right? So then I'm just like, boom, all right. So I write down day. Then I'm like, Damon. And then, like, of course, I know, like, Damon is like another term for demon, or like an earlier, you know, spelling or however for demon. But I'm like, okay, so that's why I wrote Damon, Damien, demon. And then they said the same thing about like jinns, genies. And then all stems from the melatonin, which is considered like dark light in our body. So we have like white light, dark light, gray light. So like the melatonin would be like dark light to me. So this is just where I'm getting into now. So then boom, while I'm working on this, out of nowhere, this came to my head, like the Oregon Trail. So I'm like, what does this even mean? Like, this has nothing to do with do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. I didn't think it had anything to do with Damon. And so I'm just like, okay, boom. So the Oregon Trail. So when I start, doing my research to the Oregon Trail, it led me to the Lakota Tribe, which, or you can call them like Lakota Sioux. But then this is where it starts getting interesting to me. But okay, so the Lakota Tribe, what I got right here. They originated around the western Great Lakes. Okay. So this was North Dakota, South Dakota, and then some provinces in like Canada. Boom. Or some places in Canada. So then, researching them, I found out about the Black Hills Mountain, which this is very interesting because the other day when I made the video talking about the Anunnaki, and I don't know why I keep dragging that like that. I just can't. So the Anunnaki, whatever. But anyways, we'll talk about the Anunnaki, and I was talking about the Bronze Age War, right? So I didn't really look much into like the Bronze Age War, more into like more like the Anunnaki themselves, their role, and then like which places they had ruled on Earth, or which they location. Boom. But anyways, so I researched from the Oregon Trail, the Oregon Tears, and it's so interesting because one of my favorite movies as a kid, is called Far and Away, and it's got Kate Winslet in it, and I have no idea why I love that movie. I think that one was based like in Oklahoma, but it was one of my favorite movies, and I was like 6 and 7 watching this movie like repetitively. Don't know why, but I've always did. So this was kind of reminding me of like Far and Away. Like they was out in pursuit of some land. When they found their land, put their flags down, and some people came and tried to take their land. They fought for it. Boom. So anyway, so when I got to the Black Hills Mountain, so they had no problem with the Lakota tribe settling there. There was even a treaty and everything made, and the treaty got broke, and he's like, forget that. My words went out the window once they found that there was gold there. And then we're still thinking about the Anunnaki, and the story of even why they came to Earth was supposedly because there was gold here on Earth, right? And then the Anunnaki resulted in war, the gods against the humans and subhumans, la 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 la. But then the Black Hills War resulted in the tribe fighting against the other people, right? Boom. So then what we got? Okay, ancestors, elemental master, restore balance. Okay. All right, I was getting downloads in between. Okay, so don't mind that. What we got? Okay, so this is more history. So they also is known as the Teton Sioux compromises of the 7 district bands. Okay, yeah, okay. So this is just a little information about them and then where they was like located. And then I just documented here their wars. So they've been fighting like over their own land that was rightfully theirs. It was theirs. They crossed the Missouri River or what have you. Yep, they crossed the Missouri River and they found this in 1770. And then they've been fighting for their, or I'm sorry. So in 1851, that's when it said Laramie, the treaty recognized Lakota's sovereignty over much of the Central Plains in exchange for passage along the Oregon Trail. So that was the treaty. Then boom, it went out the window once they figured out it was gold there. And then they've been fighting. So these are like all the different conflicts that they've had. And then even down in which I showed you here, 1730, right? They was pushed off of their own place and they went to go find another but they founded the Black Hills in 1770. So from 1770, this has been a conflict. And then 2007 is saying that, you know, they was trying to give them their own independence of their own land, and it was like, yeah, over $1 billion. It was 122 million at the time, but like with interest and stuff, it accrued over like $1 billion now. But in 2007, they refused the offer because they said like if they took this offer, that would mean they was giving up their rights to the land, and it still just remained like an open book pretty much. Because they said like this is my land, and then it made me start thinking about that song like this land is my land, this land is your land. And then just thinking like from California to the New York Island. Okay, I ain't gonna sing it out, but this was like made me thinking about this, like, you know, like you can look at that song in a way like, oh, this land was made for you and me. And then like you think of like, you know, going back into like the Moors and the Moors, right? There was already a group of people here, however you want to look at it, and then somebody else came and then like tried to forcibly make them share their land to say like, oh, this is all of our stuff, but then took all for themselves and then gave them none. But what we got? Oh, so that's why I was just like trying to see what was in the Black Hills. So that was interesting to me that there's a wind cave there. And then these was the 7 bands associated with the tribe. Okay, that's all. Still talk about what happened in 2007. And then, so boom. Then going back to the Anunnaki. So then I'm just like, okay. So I know that they fought in the Bronze Age War, and it was pretty much about gold and the earth resources. So I was like, okay, I know their story started in Mesopotamia, but then did not know that it also meant, like, the name meant the land between the rivers, or between 2 rivers, which is the Euphrates and the Tigris rivers. Then interesting enough to me, on the map, I think it's like right here, sits like the Taurus mountain. And then this is the Mediterranean Sea. And then Turkey like was like up here. And then this was also called, Mesopotamia was also called the cradle of civilizations, because they developed writing, astronomy, law, timekeeping, and blah, blah, blah. So then I just put like the other places on the map because that's interesting to me. Like just even thinking about the Bible stories now, put the Anunnaki into these Bible stories. And then like I even started like in my head retelling the story backwards, like where they say God is, I put the devil, and then where they say the devil, I place God. And then I've done that for a few years now, and since I have, it makes a lot more sense, right? And then once you just really get to the inner knowing about what God is, the concept, the title of what God is, like it a lot more would make sense when you stop thinking about this like this, magical figure. It'll all make sense. But I'm like, okay, boom, just thinking about like the stories of the Bible, Jesus being born in Nazareth, going to Jerusalem, oh Israel, and la 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 la. So that's where I'm at with this. And then just a little more research about the Anunnaki people. And like I said, they was in Turkey, supposedly. And then from there, what we got? Oh, so going back to the jinns. So like when I had made this, like, so right here, like talking about the other words for like demon, jinn came up, and genie, right? So, this is what we're getting at now. So, the word Genesis in itself, right? Genesis, what do you see? Gene, right? Or genes, right? Genes is genes. Then coming from Genesis, you develop genetics. Because after genetics, from genes to genetics, that means that's a process, like a scientific. I'm not gonna get into all that, but boom. What I'm talking about over here, wrestling, where suplex. Ha! I was like, what the heck? Scared myself for a second. Like, what you talking about, girl? But okay, so that's what I was getting at right now. So talking about the word Genesis and genetics, right? And then thinking about the solar plexus, because this word just means soul, sun. That's our sun, right? And then just thinking about the word soul, or I'm sorry, I unscrabbled, like what else can I get out of solar? So I got orals. So then thinking about plexus, what can I get out of that? That's why I got suplex, and that's why I just wrote it down, like the wrestling move where you arch your back. But I wrote down the definitions because there was a lot of keywords in here, like opponent, lift, arch, ground, and throws opponent on the mat on backwards. So I was like, there's a lot of stuff that just jumped out to me in that definition. So I was just like, boom, I'm gonna write it down. I know it'll come back to me later or when I need it. So then boom, thinking about the sun and the solar plexus, and then break it down like what plex means. So the plex just means like to either fold or have many parts. Okay, so it's a folder to have many parts. And then I'm thinking about like to math and nature and things like that. So this will represent like a sine wave. And then I'm like, okay. And then a sine wave also looks like a wave, like when you're looking like medical stuff or what have you, the rhythm. And then also it looks like water. So I was just like, this gotta mean something. Don't know what yet. And then just thinking about the sun. So it's like, oh, the sun walked across the water, and the sun is a reflection. Let me see what we're talking about. Oh, the sun is a reflection. And a reflection, like people like, oh, you look just like your daddy, or you look just like your mama. And they just mean like you're a splitting image. And that's what I was getting at, like a splitting image. And then still thinking about the Anunnaki story, genetics, to split an image. That means like gene splicing, or just some type of extraction of, or in like insertion of or extraction of something, right? Because you got to take away from yourself to give something to something. And then it's like a math problem now. What you do to one side, you have to do to the other. balance. So then, like, just still thinking about all of this stuff. Okay, thinking about the solar plexus. Okay, that's why I got the colostrum, the Christ oil, pineal gland, lights the lamp, raise the kundalini. Okay, so it sounds like a process. Going from the brain down the spinal cord. I'm pretty sure. Yep, Jacob's ladder. So from the pineal. Okay, and that's what I was getting at. Like, music keys are just tones, and like we communicate in all different types of tones or notes, but we just call them different things. But it's really all just frequency. And then let's see. And then I had said before, like, the story of Genesis, to me, it had always sounded like an account story. Like, somebody that already then got arrested and then having to write out the statement of what they did. And that's just pretty much just like where I've been getting at. Like, the Garden of Eden, more so being like a laboratory or a hospital, some type of facility, not an actual, like, grass and trees and pretty little flowers, PG-13. And that's why I just want everybody to understand, like, that Bible was not written in PG-13. It was understood in PG-13 because we haven't matured in spirit or matured in wisdom to see, like, it is what it is. And then, like, just getting into, like, the whole conception story. This is why I'm on the Garden of Eden. Genetics, gene splicing. So what if? And that's why I was like, with the conception story, like, if you want to follow like Christianity, it says like the angel came to Mary to tell Mary about Jesus, right? But then science will still say that Mary plus Joseph had Jesus. Science, right? But spirituality was like immaculate conception. But then when you think about the word immaculate, right? Immaculate conception. This draws my mind to IVF. Someone who could not got a way through science, right? So that story about like God and Mary was really like a science experiment, like extracting kind of like, what's that, the sperm banks. It was a deposit, right? A deposit, not an actual act. And it may have been an actual act, but in my mind right now, I'm going to say that it was not an actual act. And then that was the lie, because the genetics or the genes would match up to say like, oh yeah, this is the father. How else would you be the father if not that? But if like the father took his seed or his resources and then mixed it, or with his daughter's resources, so his sperm, her egg, but through science, and then put it inside of the mother for the mother to carry. And I know that sounds crazy, but that's just where my mind's going. And not saying that's exactly what happened, but that's just like along the lines of where my eyes are going. And then like how the all-seeing eye is really like a 24-hour recorder. It sees at all times. But like, we use imagination a lot, and we try to fill in the blanks of what, trying to make things seem more what it was. Because like, even when I'm getting down with the genetics, we're just gonna get there. Hang on. So what do I have here? Data stored on files. Eye records. Eyes are portals that witness truth and desire. So I said, what if the earliest humans... Yeah, and that it's kind of throwing me off just a little bit. All right, so what if the earliest humans never knew death until the interference in human nature? And now being a host or vessel holding or balancing both spirit and fleshly natures, this created time, or it allotted this created time, allowing the spirit to have experiences before the flesh rots out. So then I asked myself, does Earth have like a maximum like cap of energy that has to be sustained to like, you know, keep this system powered or keep this illusion. Because as we know, like with statistics, it says like, you know, someone dies like every minute, every day somebody dies. But then as you know, every day or every minute somebody's born. So it's kind of like a trade-off. So I'm like, what if like that's another way of how energy is being recycled in a way, and how it's allowing the past, present, and the future all to play out at the same time. Oh, my mind just goes to different things. So then thinking about like the story of Jesus, like connecting the houses or the churches together, rejoining the churches. I've already broke down like the chakras, like you can apply them so many different ways. So to me, I said the chakras represent the past, present, and the future, and that's why it's separated the way that it is: the 3, the 1, or the 2, and then the 2, or the 3, 1, 3. 3, 1, 3. Put your hand up, however you want to look at it, right? But your heart is in the middle, and your heart balances all the chakras. So if your heart's not aligned, you won't be aligned, and if your spirit's not, you know, aligned or in a good place, then your vessel, your mind, your physical being is not going to be in a good place either, because it's like the sun, not the SON. It's just genuinely a reflection. So then I was getting into like, you know, flipping the story now, you know, the story about the serpent, you know, telling Eve a lie. So what if humans was never supposed to be advanced? Because we know that they already were there per Cain. Oh, don't throw me out there with those Homo erectus or those Homo sapien people. But he was like, don't throw me out there with those other people. I don't want to go out there with them, right? He's like, I'm like them, but I ain't like them. You know, I'm going to stick out. Like, you know, I'm going to be a target. Like, you know, like low key, like, you know, y'all made me better than them. And then you're going to put me out there to go live with them. They gonna mess me up. So that's the way, like, I took that story, right? So then, like, go ahead and flip it now, right? So look at the creator, the father of lies, as the creator, right? Or as the father, right? So when it says the serpent gave wisdom and knowledge, and you know, it peed the father off, it made him mad, like, rah. So what if somebody who was manipulating somebody, right? And for a long time they've been getting away with it, kiki and ha because they got away with something, right? And then, you know, somebody from the outside looking in, a watcher or an observer, if you will, was like, you know what, that ain't right. Like, somebody needs to tell her, like, you know, he lying pretty much, and just tell her the truth. So the serpent told Eve the truth, because how would she know what was true? Because all she knew was the lie. She was born into that lie, or created into this lie. So she knew no other directive, because there was no reason to look for another directive, because that's what you're used to, because that's all that there was. So somebody came and told her, this serpent, and then like a snake, like somebody that tell on you, like, oh, you snake, you rat, you snake, like how could you tell him, you little serpent? This is where my mind's going now, right? So he got mad, named it a serpent, cursed it and everything, because now you can't do what you've been doing. The gig is up. The gig is up. That's why you had to leave the Garden of Eden and tried to start the mobile center with the Ark story, right? Tried to restart the genetics again, mixing one of each or taking two of each, you know, a male and a female of each kind, and then, you know, trying to mix it again. And like I said again, you look at some of these animals in nature, a squirrel, like I said, I see like a fox, a rabbit. You just see like a lot of gene splicing. That's what I believe went down on Noah's Ark, right? But anyways, but back to like the houses being put back together, I look at those as the chakras, right? Because there was some type of distortion within our being, you know, and then like some stories would explain, like, cause natural disasters and cause this to happen, a cause and effect, because of a decision based from, like, made from logic or reason and whatever. that it just was. So boom. So that's why it was called the serpent. But then the father regarded them as bad fruit. Okay. So I was thinking about, like, what if, like, this bad fruit, what if they did try, making, like, humans, or making superhumans, I should say, because humans were already there. And I just believe they was just, like, genderless in a way. They just were there. Like, but another story for another time. But what if they made, like, defective stuff, like, oh, you're not good enough, or this is not what I want, or you don't look like me, you're not in my image, so to speak, because, like, too much of a likeness, like, genetics. So say, like, the incest story, this is what I was getting at too, because I think it was, like, maybe like a brother and a sister. Maybe they didn't physically do the act, but scientifically, medically, they did mix their stuff together and created a deformity. One, they probably didn't want to claim it, like, it's deformed, or tried it again. This is where my mind is going. So that's why I was like, but then I'm like, okay, so the father's seeing Adam and Eve as bad fruit because they found out the truth about what was really going down in the Garden of Eden. And then you got to kick them out, gaslight them, make sure everybody think they're crazy, and then get enough people to repeat this story. Public opinion sways anything in this world pretty much. And then, like, gaslighted them and kicked them out of the garden. So then, that's just where my mind was going. Another video. Yeah. Because then I just broke down mother and father. Then, of course, I found the likeness was THER. So I said, is that there? Or here, or hurt? Hurt, like a frequency. And then also, like, the star, the ether. And then breath. And then just seeing what other words I got out of the common. And then the differences was just fa, fa, or mo, or om. So I was like, okay, then the two together that's in common would spell like foam. But I'm like, both were there. And that's what I was getting at about, like, the two energies or the two essences that mixed, because I believe it was two that mixed, but then there was also a third that joined the party, and it could have been like, but I think I'm just gonna make another part to this, because I want to talk about this Garden of Eden. That's why I said it started in Genesis. And then you look at Genesis, genes is us. Oh my gosh. And that's what I was just getting at. And then, oh my gosh. Yeah, but not. Yeah, it's probably be like another video. And then also just pointing out, in the word garden is danger. You gonna describe what that? DANGER. And then also inside of danger is anger with the D left. And so is rage. Listen, all these things inside of this pretty little garden, huh? Yeah, anger, danger, rage, and who else? Who else? Like, who knows what else? But yeah, I want to get into that, because then I started getting into the brain too. I'm gonna make another video.